Hi everyone, it's Emma here, and today we're going to do another journal page. So we're going to go with a kind of winter wonderland scene, and the papers that I've chosen to use are from this Kaisercraft collection, and they've got some absolutely beautiful papers in here. You can see those. They're really pretty in sort of a frosty theme. So I've chosen first of all to use 3 papers out of the collection, and I want to use this paper, and I'm going to cut this big tree out and possibly some of these smaller ones. I'm going to use this paper and I'm going to cut the frame out of this, and then I'm going to use this paper. So the idea is that once I've cut the frame out, that's going to act as a picture frame, and then the scene is going to be inside here. And then this paper is going to act as a sort of wallpaper, so it looks like the frame's on the wall. And then with the trees, etc., we're going to build up a scene inside the picture frame. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut out the frame, and I'm going to cut out this tree and, as I said, possibly some of the smaller ones. I'm just going to cut those out using scissors, but I will possibly use a craft knife to get these small pieces out from around the edges. And because it's going to take me a while to cut this out, I will go and cut this off camera, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so now we've got all the elements cut out and I've got my frame. I took the big tree and 2 of the smaller trees. I'll cut the blue square out of the middle of the frame, and I used a craft knife to do that because I'm going to turn it over and use that as the background for the scene. And let's put those aside a minute. And then we've got the paper that we're going to use as the wallpaper. So I'm going to start off, and I think I'm going to need 2 sheets of this because this is a large size journal. Yeah. And so the first thing I'm going to do is lay this down and glue it to the page, and then trim around the edges and get rid of the excess. So I'm just going to trim the edge off this first so that it's easier to work with. I'm going to save that border for something else, so we won't cut it. That's a better size now. Okay, and to glue that down, I'm going to use Tombow Mono Liquid Glue. This has got a fine pen tip for detail work, and it's also got a broad brush tip. So I'm going to use the brush tip. I'm going to spread that all over the page, stick the paper down, and then I'll go around and trim off the excess once it's dry. So now that my background paper's down, I'm going to go and age the edges of this, and possibly some parts of the middle, bearing in mind that we're keeping the frame in the middle. But I'm going to give it an aged look because I want it to look like old wallpaper. So to do that, I'm going to use Distress ink from Tim Holtz in Vintage Photo and a blending tool. So I'm just going to take a bit of the ink onto the blending tool, and we're going to go darker at the edges and then work it in towards the middle to make it lighter. Right, so now that the edges are nice and distressed, I'm going to use the middle piece and start building up the scene for the picture. So I'm going to get this in place, and I'm just going to check it with the frame to make sure it's where I want it. Now the frame's going to hang off the edges of the paper, but that's okay. I like it, it looks great. So, yep, that's about central. So I'll mark down the middle of the paper with my finger just to score it a little bit. And I'm going to mark around the edges where I want it to go. Okay, so I'm going to put my book aside for a bit now while we work on the scene. And so the first thing I'm going to do with this is just give it some heavy white gesso, just a quick coat of that, just to prepare it. I'm just going to brush that all over. So next step, now that the gesso is dry, I'm going to make a background for the scene, and I'm going to use some Tim Holtz distress paints. I'm going to start off with broken china and picket fence, and then I might also add some brushed pewter as well. So we'll see how we get on. So I'm just going to dab these on. And then I'm going to use one of these little sponge brushes just to push it around a bit. I like the texture that these give. It's not a solid colour. Okay, so now that my background's dry, I'm going to do some stamping, and I'm going to be using these two stamp sets from Visible Image. And the first is Winter Wonderland set, and the second one is the Enchanting Snowflakes set. So I'm going to do, which one we're going to do first? I think we're going to go with the Winter Wonderland set first. And I'll just pop on my cutout trees so I can see round about where I want to stamp these images as well. So you're going to have that big one in the foreground. I'll have those there, so I think if we do a big one behind Okay. So I'm going to attach this to an acrylic block so that I can line up and see where I'm putting it. And I'm going to be using an archival ink pad in French Ultramarine. So just stamp that up, ink that up. I just want these to be in the background, so they're going to be quite pale. Okay, now I'm going to stamp one last one of the big trees in Cobalt. Okay, so now using the smallest of the snowflake stamp set, I'm going to use a Versamark ink pad and just stamp on 3 of the little snowflakes. And now I'm going to cover that with embossing powder from Ranger in Snowflake Tinsel. And then we're going to heat it up using the heat gun. This is a nice holographic glittery embossing powder. So now my snowflakes are embossed, but also some of my trees are embossed. As the blue archival ink was still wet, some of the powder went onto the trees, and you know what? I really like it because it looks like there's snow on the branches. So I'm happy with that, so that doesn't matter. So the next thing I'm going to do is just add a bit of colour, a bit of a wash to the cutout trees. And to do that, I'm going to use a distress ink pad in Broken China, the same as the distress paint, so that, you know, it keeps continuity. And I'm going to just blend some of that in to the trees. Same technique, using a little blending tool and just dabbing that onto the pad and rubbing it over. Right, so I'm going to go and glue those trees down now to the page, and I'm going to use 3D matte gel to do that. I'm just going to smear it on the back of each piece with a palette knife and just glue them down. Right, so now it's time to start adding some shadow around the trees. And to do that, I'm going to use some Distress Stain. And this is in Faded Jeans. And I'm just going to pop a bit on there. And I'm going to use a really, really thin brush. Add a bit of water to water it down. And just go ahead and add some shadows. Now I'm just going to wipe that up, and then just to darken up right in those little cracks and crevices there, I'm going to add some of this neat so that it adds a bit more depth and dimension. Really make the trees pop. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to do for this bit is I'm just going to add some splatters. So I'm going to take a tiny bit of gesso, water it down, and then we're going to add some splatters so it looks like snow falling. Right, now I've set that aside to dry for a bit, and we're going to start work on the frame. Now I want this frame to have a shimmer to it. So for that, I'm going to use a Lindy Stamp Gang Glitz Spray. And that's just shimmer in here, and this is steel shimmer. So the nice silvery colour should go nice with our wintry scene. So I am just going to cover the frame in a good old spray of this. Make sure it's totally covered. And then I'm going to go and dry that with the heat gun. And then once it's dry, you'll be able to see the nice shimmery coat all over it. Okay, so I don't know if you can see whether the camera will pick it up very well, but now that the frame's dry, it's got a beautiful silvery, shimmery sheen to it that just makes it look that little bit nicer. No, I don't think it's picking up as well as it does in real life, but never mind. Right, so let's put everything together and see how it's going to look. There we go. So there's an idea of how it's going to look. Yeah, I like that. So now let's go ahead and start gluing this down. So we'll go with this first and glue the main piece down, but I don't want to glue these overlapping bits of branches because I want those to come outside the frame. I want it to be quite magical and make it sort of appear as though it's coming out of the frame, going into the frame. So sort of, how can I put it, kind of like a Narnia feel or something. So let's go and glue that down. And to do that, I'm going to use soft matte gel from Finnavar Art Basics and just brush it on with an old paintbrush that I don't mind having glue on. I'm going to do one half first and then the other because of the fold. It makes it easier. Right, so now I've got everything stuck down, I'm going to start adding some shadow around the edges of the frame. Now, I only want to go around this edge and the bottom edge, because if you think of the way that the light's cast in its direction, I want it to be coming from here, so the shadow is going to be just on this side. So to do that, I'm going to be using a Stabilo, don't know if you can see that, no, a Stabilo oil pencil and a little water brush. And I just drill on the edge with the pencil. And then, as soon as you put the water brush onto it, it dissolves and gives a lovely effect. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some snow, and to do that I'm going to use Finnavar's Snowflake Paste, which is a paste that's quite textured and full of tiny specks of glitter. No, it's really pretty. So we're going to add that to the bottom of the scene, and I'm going to add a bit on a few of the boughs of the trees, and I'm also going to bring it out of the picture, just like I brought the branches out of the picture, so that the snow is coming through and the winter's coming in. So let's go ahead and add some of that now. And this will add some lovely texture to the page as well. Okay, so I left my snow to dry overnight and it's all nice and dry now and looking lovely. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the band off the top of the paper with the trees on, and we've got Enjoy the Magic of the Season. So I'm going to chop the words up out of this, and then I'm going to edge them in the archival ink Cobalt, and then I'm going to place them on the page. And then I'm going to glue those down using the soft matte gel, but this is just in a little precision nozzle bottle. Okay, and now I'm just going to create shadows around the words, again with the Stabilo or pencil and a little water brush. And then as a final step, I'm just going to add a few of these self-adhesive crystals, and these are from Dusty Attic. And so there we have it, a magical winter wonderland journal page. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please don't forget to give it a like and subscribe down below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.